Welcome. I'm Stephen Garvey with National Citizens Alliance. Tonight we have an introductory presentation on privacy surveillance, and we believe there's a privacy crisis in Canada, in all other Western countries, non-Western. As far as I'm concerned, this is a huge issue. We're going to blow it open tonight, and quite frankly, I find it frightening. Once you start to look at all the evidence, and piece it together, similar to our transhumanism. This is absolutely frightening what's going on in this country. And remember one thing before I start, that what you hear on the surface in the mainstream, the status quo, is so far from the truth, so far from reality on the ground. And this is going to punctuate it today. Unbelievable. Let's get right into it. We're going to start with the Constitution. We're going to work through the Privacy Act, and then just blow it wide open. So here, this is the Charter of Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which the Canadian people never voted on. There is no mention whatsoever of privacy in this document. The word privacy is not even mentioned. So I beg the question to everyone to consider: how can you have fundamental freedoms and reality when you have no right to privacy? When there's no basis for privacy? Surely privacy is a cornerstone of basic freedoms. And that's something NCA supports. We want to make privacy a fundamental right. But we beg, even right now, how can you have fundamental freedoms with no privacy? And we're going to dig into this, and this is going to make a lot of sense. I've got a number of documents, and they're terrifying. But let's rip open another layer now. Remember, there's nothing in this act, Constitution, which the Canadian people never voted on. You go in there and look yourself. There's nothing on privacy. And who passed this charter, this 1982 Constitution? It was the puppet establishment politicians working for the status quo, the establishment. Of course, they don't have privacy in there. But let's get to the next document. We're going to go up here. And this is the Privacy Act. And this is a fraud as far as I'm concerned. It's a front, it's a facade that there's actually privacy in this country. It's similar to the electoral system now. The Election Act is a facade that there's actually legitimate, fair elections in this country. Rather, we have multi-controlled establishment parties, fake media running the elections. Any alternative party that's true, like NCA, is facing a mountain of opposition, state opposition. But we will overcome it. But this Privacy Act, if we scroll right down here, and this is the basis for the Privacy Commission, which is just a bureaucratic front organization that's creating the facade of privacy. It's kind of like double speak out of George Orwell. But Section 4 here, and go look for yourself, the collection of personal information. And it says, quote here, no personal information shall be collected by a government institution unless it relates directly to an operating program or activity of the institution. In other words, any government institution can grab your personal information, including surveillance, invade your privacy through any of their programs or activities. There's nothing that says they can't do it. This is the cornerstone of no privacy right here. And yet this is the basis of the Privacy Commission, which is a bureaucratic front organization. Unbelievable. Now I'm going to dig into Canada's NSA equivalent, We're going to look at that, and then we're going to get into CSIS. We have to talk about CSIS because they're doing all kinds of surveillance on Canadians. But let's get into what's the NSA version now. We're going to go right to their website. So this is called the Communication Security Establishment. This is the NSA equivalent in the US, which Snowden was going on about, invading their privacy. Well, this is Canada's version, CSE, Communication Security Establishment. Cyber operations, right off the government website. And they have the authority to use to defense systems designated by the Minister of National Defence of being importance to the government of Canada, energy goods, telecommunication networks, banking systems. Of course, the banking system, they want to protect the central bank, right? Elections infrastructure, right? So they do have active cyber operations, disrupt capability of foreign threats to Canada, foreign terrorist groups, foreign cyber criminals, hostile intelligence agencies, state-sponsored actors. That's fine. But then they claim here that there's a disclaimer here. The Minister of Foreign Affairs must also be consulted for defensive cyber operations and must consent to active cyber operation. Cyber operations must not target Canadians or anyone in Canada, and I'm going to address that. Interfere with the course of justice, interfere with the course of democracy, cause death, bodily harm, either deliberately or by criminal negligence. Like all of our activities, these operations are subject to the review of the National Security and Intelligence Review Agency. Never heard of that. National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. So the bureaucracy, the deep state, and in Ottawa is overseeing this. But what's relevant here, they claim that they're not targeting Canadians or anyone in Canada, but I beg the question, are there any other agencies using the capabilities of the CSE, like CSIS, right? So they may not be doing it directly, but there may be other agencies piggybacking on this organization right here. But let's go into CSIS now, and I think that will shed more light onto it. And this is from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. I think it gives a good. It's pretty disturbing what CSIS is up to. These are basically intelligent officers working in Canada. They're working abroad. They're basically spies for the government. And right here, right out the front, what does CSIS do? CSIS is Canada's spy agency. CSIS collects, analyzes information, security intelligence within Canada and around the world. So it's safe to assume they're doing massive surveillance on Canadians online and probably obviously on the ground. Its primary function is to advise the Canadian government on national security and threats to the security of Canada. Espionage against Canada and detrimental Canada's interest. Foreign influence activity. Serious violence for the purpose of achieving political, religious, ideological objective. That's kind of a wide open agenda there. That can be construed in different ways. Activities that lead to the destruction, overthrow by violence of Canada's system of government. And we do know that CSIS was targeting innocent Canadians who were participating in lockdown protests. We know that for a fact. They were preventing some individuals from traveling throughout the country. Obviously, they were doing surveillance on them. So Is that just? Is that fair? Do you have to answer questions from a CSIS agent? No. If you don't want to speak to a CC agent, you may decline answers. That's good to know. What will happen? They don't have to disclose who they are because they're a spy agency. So they're undercover. Can CSIS take my cell phone computer? No, unless CSIS obtained the approval of the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, a warrant issued by a judge. They cannot take your cell phone or computer or use it for intrusive techniques. But they can gain access. They can run surveillance on anyone. Is CSIS allowed to investigate protest groups? Lawful advocacy protest itself cannot be investigated by CSIS. Yet they were doing that. So they were deeming these people doing lockdown protests as a threat to the security of Canada. Unbelievable. I know they've been saying stuff about NCA directly. They don't like people talking about 5G because the government of Canada is committed to the full implementation of 5G. So CSIS views anyone who talks about 5G as a threat to Canada. Remember that. This is where they're coming from. It's quite disturbing how they operate. Let's go right to the CSIS site and see what they have to say. Right here. This is right from the Government of Canada website. And collecting, sharing intelligence. CSIS investigators use a variety of methods to collect information on individual groups whose activities are suspected of constituting a threat to national security. And of course, they're not going to tell you all their avenues to collect information. The information necessary to conduct an is collected from various sources, open sources, newspaper, periodicals, academic journals, foreign, domestic broadcasts, official documents, other published material, online as well. Why don't they mention that? They're doing online surveillance. Members of the public, human sources, foreign governments, Canadian partners as well through technical interception of communications and inquiry. So they can intercept your phone messages, your emails, all that stuff. And then they claim it's subject to a process of accountability and review by the deep state. And also they share the information. They collaborate with allies, and I'm going to get into this. This ties into the Five Eyes. They share pertinent intelligence. Of course, they don't mention the Five Eyes, but I think we need to talk about that next. That's the next dot in this. So let's go right into the Five Eyes. Again, this is right from the Government of Canada, and it's under the gist of Public Safety Canada. And it's talking about the Five Eyes. The Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance composed of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These partner countries share a broad range of intelligence with one another in one of the world's most unified multilateral agreements. So basically, what's going on with the Five Eyes is it's another way to conduct mass dragnet surveillance of the Canadian population. They just put it on the NSA is targeting Canadians, and then they're passing on the information to the Canadian government and vice versa. So they don't run into any legal issues, even though we don't have any right to privacy. But the Canadian security establishment, at least under their mandate, they cannot target Canadians specifically. So they're going to go through the NSA or the UK intelligence or Australia to target Canadians. That's what's going on, and vice versa. The CSE is targeting Americans and sharing that information with the American government. So that's how that Five Eyes is working. And like we said, you guys, Canadians have no privacy. Americans have no privacy whatsoever. You're all being watched without question. Now I'm going to shift to the private sector because this week there was a scandal that emerged, and it's related to this. Pegasus, the NSO group, how you can hire a private company to conduct surveillance. And this is one of the companies that came out. So let's talk about that now. This relates into it because governments are using the services of the NSS group and other groups like it. So this is right from their website. It's based out of Israel. Just it could be any other country. Cyber intelligence for global security and stability. They're claiming creates technology that helps government agencies prevent, investigate terrorism and crime to save thousands of lives around the globe. Well, that's their PR spin, but it's being used to track activists. Governments are using it to track other governments that they're want to find information about. But you can actually pay for this service and basically get into almost anyone's phone and track them, know where they are. And people have died through this. They have been targeted, and we're going to get into that. But this just came out. I'm going to go right into the document now. A couple that'll shed light on Pegasus. This is just another layer to the surveillance that's going on. But take this with a grain of salt. This is from one of the mainstream media, the BBC. Pegasus spyware sold to governments targets activists. So they're targeting people the government doesn't like. Rights activists, journalists, lawyers around the world have been targeted with phone malware sold to authoritarian governments by an Israeli surveillance firm. They are on a list of some 50,000 phone numbers of people believed to be of interest to clients of the company NSO Group. So you can literally buy surveillance now. They claim their software is intended for criminals and terrorists, but it's targeting innocent people. Right here, what do we know about the people targeted? Media outlets working on the investigation said they had identified more than 1,000 people spanning over 50 countries whose numbers were on the list. They include politicians, heads of states, business executives, activists, several Arab royal family members. More than 180 journalists were found to be on the list. And this is where they were, who were on the alleged victims, as people from Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Hungary, India, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Morocco, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, United Emirates, and I'm sure the list goes on. And this is what Snowden was talking about. as well. Partly what Pegasus spyware can do, it gets installed into your phone without you knowing, and then it harvests your emails, your photos, your calendar, your recorded calls, your contacts, your messages, your WhatsApp, your active camera, your active microphone, your GPS data, so they know where you are. And then here's one of them. It was a Saudi journalist who was murdered in October 2018 while visiting the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. His body was then dismembered. That's just one example. The investigation found that spyware was installed on his fiance's phone days after his murder, and that his wife's phone was targeted with spyware between September 2017 and April 2018. And there it is there. But this is real stuff of what's going on. It's just another layer to the surveillance. Uh, it's a spinoff on the Five Eyes. It gives the government another channel to conduct surveillance, and they can create distance. It's through a private firm, and it's very disturbing, but it is going on. Innocent people are being targeted, just like in Canada. We had people involved into the protests against the lockdowns who were targeted by CSIS. Apparently, that was a threat to Canada or the establishment. Yes, it was a threat to the establishment, I guess. They were calling out their narrative, but you see what's going on here in this country. It's quite disturbing, but we're going to dig a bit deeper. I got another document on this I want to share. And this is on the data leak. And it just confirms what I was and this is Amnesty International and Paris-based nonprofit Forbidden Stories. I think they did the initial research on this. Again, 80 journalists in 10 countries through Pegasus project. Pegasus spyware sold by NSO Group. Again, it's repeating what I already shared. It's used by unaccountable actors for human rights abuses. Of course, the governments aren't saying anything about this because they want to continue their surveillance. They want to use this service if need be. Come on. And there's no right to privacy in this country. Right? So let's spin this in another direction now. We're going to take a brief look at facial recognition because this is another component of surveillance and invasion of privacy. And this here right here. This is Clearview AI. The RCMP was using them to conduct facial recognition. They actually denied they were doing it, and then they ended up admitting that they were, and now apparently they're not using it, but it doesn't mean they're not doing facial recognition. There's nothing to stop them from doing facial recognition, right, internally. But they were using this service, Clearview AI, out of the US. And quote, our platform includes the largest known database of 3 billion facial images sourced from public only web sources, including news media, mugshot website, public social media, and many other open sources. And this is all about facial recognition. Users can choose to import their own private customized facial data sets. Like the RCMP could get access to people's passport photos, mugshots, watch lists, any other facial database, Facebook profiles. Select and upload your image. So this facial recognition, it's important to keep Benjamin Franklin in mind. Those who sacrifice liberty for security deserve neither, or I should be more specific, those who sacrifice liberty for a little security deserve neither. And I would argue that this falls into this category, but we would contend at NCA that this is coming. We just need to look to China. I think they have one facial recognition camera for every 2 citizens. So that's hundreds of millions of facial recognition. Look at London, England. There's cameras every 200 meters, facial recognition going on there. So just be aware that this is coming. And this will create the basis for social credit system, more monitoring of people, but there's no basis to privacy already. You can see what's going on. You got the Five Eyes, you got CSIS, you got CSE. The whole thing is a mess. But this is reality on the ground of what's going on. And it gets worse here. I'm going to tie this into transhumanism because that's where this all is leading right now. And I did share this document already. This is right off the Government of Canada website. It's on bio-digital convergence, basically merging digital with the biological, like AI, Wi-Fi with your brain, merging the two. And I'm just going to get down here. It's pretty scary what they want to do. Through this technology. But the way it relates to surveillance, and they say it right here, monitoring, alternating, manipulating human thoughts and behaviors. I will repeat that. Monitoring, altering, manipulating human thoughts and behavior. So if I can be really blunt, this transhumanism, which is endorsed and promoted by the Government of Canada, they ultimately want to get in your brain and conduct surveillance there of your thoughts, of your dreams. This isn't made up. This is what they're pushing towards, this bio-digital convergence. At NCA, we want the public to be aware of it because if you're not aware of it, you can't do anything about it. We're very concerned about it. We don't want the government in your brain monitoring your thoughts or your dreams. That would be an absolute totalitarian, tyrannical nightmare of epic proportions, without question. I think everyone gets that, but that's where they're pushing towards. This isn't made up, but you see where it's connected. We got all these different layers, and we've only touched on some of them tonight. But I read again, quote, monitoring, altering, manipulating human thoughts and behavior, quote. This isn't made up. And we should qualify. all technology, for the most part, has some good and bad, but it's up to the public to decide. It's not for a top-down government, deep state establishment to dictate to the people. And that's what's going on in this country. We're all under surveillance. We would argue we're all potentially being monitored by the so-called deep state. This isn't made up. Whether it's CSIS, CSE, or shadow groups off that, you got the Five Eyes on top of it. We got the NSA doing mass surveillance of Canadians. That's how bad it is. And then they're sharing the data with the government of Canada. Very disturbing. And I got one last document to share. Yeah, thank you. I'm just gonna, thanks, Mike. I think NCA is on a really good path. We're really, the more we dig, the more layers we peel off, the more we get close to reality, which is good because we want to share that with the public. Our primary agenda is public awareness, public engagement. It has to be, because if people are not aware, then they don't know what's going on. They can't do anything. And we're only one organization. We rely on the public. Yeah, Dana, we can't let them. But I want to show one last document. This is out of the UK government. This stuff is, none of this stuff tonight. I challenge anyone, if they want to cry that this is far-fetched nonsense. These are all, most of these are government sources. So we challenge anyone to review what we're sharing. We challenge you. You can't. And when have you heard this discussed by these puppet parties or in the fake media? When? So let's look at this last document. I want to thank Adrian for sharing this with me. And I'm glad I was able to include it. But it builds off the bio-digital convergence. This is out of the Ministry of Defense in the United Kingdom. It's on human augmentation, the dawn of a new paradigm. And I'll cut to chase here. There's a good image down here that'll explain exactly what this is all about. There it is. Look at that, eh? They want to wire, look at that. They want to wire the whole human being. Unbelievable. Here it is here. I don't understand these transhumanists, but this is how they view evolution. You see the Wi-Fi here. Look, that arm is connected to the brain, and then ultimately they want to get into the brain. I would argue that this is de-evolution of the human. This is complete enslavement of the human being. This is the end of the human being, I would argue. They're claiming it's evolution. So you let us know what you think, but we view this as the end of the human. This is complete enslavement if they're controlling your thoughts, your dreams. You're no longer human. If they're in your brain and they have an AI consciousness, where's the human in there? If you're completely controlled, what makes you human? Your emotions, your freedom to act, your freedom to think for yourself. How are you human? How is this progress? We need to ask these questions. And look here. That calls it chemical, physical, biological augmentation, the modification of the human. It's not exclusively about adding things to human. It includes applying scientific insight, sleep management, personalized nutrition to improve performance. Oh my God. Unbelievable what they're up to. And then they're applying this to a military concept. So they will be using these bio digital humans to fight wars, and they'll be controlled. They'll be like a drone, and they'll be controlled by whoever's controlling them through their interfaces. This is very troubling. It's disengaging people from conflict. So a case can be made that the world will become more violent through this technology. We saw this through the drone technology. People so distant, it's like a video game, but literally going to have bio digital humans fighting these wars, uh, even potentially bio digital robots fighting. This isn't made up, but this is a concern of where this is going. But I personally don't see the evolution. I don't see the progress. I see this as the annihilation of the human being. When you're completely controlled, enslaved, yeah, yeah, we have to fight it. I'm looking at the comments, but this is the agenda that's coming. We need to be aware of it so we can deal with it. So they're going on, and there's positive sides to this. Maybe they can monitor more directly what's going on inside your body, but there's a real dark side to it, that, in our opinion, totally outweighs it. And their internal brain interfaces, they're already working on this. Here fitted 32 tiny electrodes into the brain, a micro precision, in a 45 minutes procedure. This is already going on. Technology is currently being tested on rodents and is intended as a prototype for future human use. So it's already coming. This is the AI consciousness that the government of Canada is endorsing and supporting and putting our tax dollars to use towards. And it's tied into pharmaceuticals, the pharmaceutical giants. So they're monitoring, they can prescribe medicine that you may not need. Exoskeleton technologies are coming as well. So they're outside technology around the body. Artificial intelligence. They're talking about surveillance, management, robotics. But this is the stuff that's coming. I think you know we went through quite a bit tonight, but we're going to explore this again. But it's very disturbing what's going on. Uh, there's so much double speak in our society about freedoms, and you know, like I said at the beginning about the Privacy Commission, it's just a front organization um, pretending that there's actual privacy when there really isn't. But if you cut through it, you see these operatives working in the shadows and the surveillance through the Five Eyes, and then we tied into the bio digital, the facial recognition. It's very concerning. Dark and evil. I'm looking at the comments here. That's a good one. There's another one. We're going to have to look that up, John. Thank you for sharing that. And it's not meant to be positive. This is more top down governance. The reality of our state right now, um, there's so much pretense, layer of facade. A lot of people have been fooled thinking that they're free, they have privacy. Um, yes, 5G control, it's a weapon. Uh, and 5G is not even deployed, but we're going to do another thing on 5G to uncover that. They want to make super soldiers too. Read about that years ago. Yeah, it's coming as that document, and I shared that's up here. Uh, and Lena saying no one can rule us if we don't obey. But remember, it's important that we're aware, Lena. This is so insidious. What's going on? Uh, you may not even realize, like, uh, there's all these people taking the dab, but what's in it? Are there nanoparticles already in it? Have you taken other stuff that's already in you? There's so much mind control and manipulation. There's controlled information. There's misinformation. It's very challenging. That's why we have to all work together. We have to work together on this. But I hope tonight we at least shed a bit of reality on the situation facing humanity, not only Canadians, but people around the world, that things are not as they appear. In our opinion, at NCA, the greatest existential threat has to be a combination of all this, but especially this transhumanism. When they're wanting ultimately to get into your brain, control your thoughts, that's a game changer right there. So we all have to be aware of this. This has to be the ultimate struggle against organization, governments, individuals who are pushing this. We've all been fooled. That's starting to change. The awakening is happening and will grow more. Let's hope. But we're learning more now. But what do we not know? Look what we shared tonight. It's quite disturbing what's going on. But we're going to do a follow up on this. We have to. But this is a starting place to help raise awareness. And I want to thank people for sharing the comments. Share more comments. Share if you enjoy the content, you think it has value. Please share it to help us in our ability to uh, spread awareness And that's a very positive thing. We want to empower people, Canadians, non-Canadians, through factual information that's based in reality. So you can make the best decisions. So you can protect you and your family. But if you don't know what's coming, you're highly vulnerable. Myself, I'm deeply disturbed by this. I find it frightening um, that everything we've been told is a facade, absolute facade on the surface. And this shows it here. The surveillance, the no privacy, wanting to get into your brains. Very disturbing. The struggle goes on. What can I say? I can't add any more, but it's very disturbing. Please share your thoughts.